which makes it even better. Luis is originally from Uruguay, but has worked across Latin America over the decades in many different functions and roles with a number of political leaders, parties, national leaders, especially developing modern political strategies and advising leaders on effective voter engagement. How do we reach the voters? How do we talk to them in a language and way that reaches them and resonates them? And across Latin America, we can see that there are many things that we in Europe can definitely learn from them. So this is our panel, which is amazing, and we will get as much out of them as we possibly can. What we will do today, and I will stop talking in just a moment, I promise you. What we will do today is that we will first have a bit of a conversation. I have prepared an opening question for all of you, not the same one, because I don't want this to become a monologue of things. I have a different question for all of you, which I will ask you to answer, and then after all three, you will have a chance to comment on the others as well. Then we will continue the conversation from there. Maybe about 20-25 minutes, and then I will open the floor for any questions and comments you have. Let's start with you, Aaron. Great to have you here, first of all. And I know that we might disagree on this, but I would want to start with I don't want to start in a very gloomy and doomy mode, but I would actually claim that it seemed for a long time that the progressives were losing the narrative battle. We were really not doing too well. We were often complicated, we concentrated on policy, we were maybe emotionally flat, we were quite boring in many ways. I don't know if anyone disagrees with me on that, but we have seen a lot of positive moments in the last year or so, which I think and I would hope would be an opening for a different kind of way. We can look at the successes of easier that comes to mind on narratives and stories is Mandami in New York, but also progressives were winning in countries like Australia, Canada, Norway, and Slovenia very, very recently, and we can see also the far right losing in Hungary. And a lot of these campaigns have been done in a new modern way with a lot of new narratives. So have our fortunes changed? Are we getting better at this narrative stuff now, Aaron?
Well, number one, thank you for the kind introduction, and thanks all of you for showing up. We know you have many choices, and we're grateful you chose us. I want to answer this in two ways, and as you introduced, probably properly cynical, because that's never served me poorly in my career thus far. So I do want to say two things. There are tactical victories and there are narrative victories. Most of what I heard on that list was a tactical victory, and sometimes maybe not even. So I do think we need to be serious about it. Take Mamdani off the table. I'm sure we'll hear a lot. Slovenia, we thought we won. We actually ended up losing, an election that we probably should have won with the scandal, and I feel really bad about this. A place like Norway, we are winning these Pyrrhic victories where I feel like the right wing's arguments are being straightened. Norway will have a more difficult election with a stronger right wing next time. Australia and Canada, I think, are excellent examples of people claiming a narrative. In this case, tariffs, anti-Trump, nationalism, that's, doing it skillfully and effectively. But unfortunately, they're not creating narratives. They're only writing narratives that pre-exist. And, Hungary, there's definitely hard to pin down with the narrative victory, and the tactical victory is very mixed. I think you saw civil society doing a great job mobilizing people around a narrative that maybe will win this time, and that actually is quite a sexy narrative that we don't use enough. But otherwise, you have, factionalism of the far right and the regular right actually contributing to the victory. So what I do want to say, and I actually don't normally wear glasses, but this is an important enough point that I'm going to take them off to make it, is that despite the reasons that we've been brought together and despite my job, a lot of our jobs, which is to go around and talk about these things, I want us to stop learning lessons and stop sending me articles and stop recommending podcasts for me to read, to listen to about all of these elections, because we are not learning anything from change elections. When we celebrate a change election as a narrative victory, we end up with the tactics of Joe Biden, we end up with the tactics of Kamala Harris, we end up with the tactics of Keir Starmer. I can name, any number of lists of people, Donald Tusk on the list, of people who have won change elections without particularly interesting tactics and then have had a very short time with a victory because it gets pushed back on. I think places like Spain, right? This election here, this will be very instructive. Brazil with Lula, these were where tactics will have to be applied in a non-change context. Because too often we are taking credit for the way the wind is blowing, and my prediction is that they're all change elections from here on in. Not to sound, too cascading crisis of capitalism about it, but that is how I feel. Every election will have a change, a shade of change, and we need to be developing the narrative outside of that and not adopting right-wing narratives.
Yeah, how are you a change candidate when you're incumbent? And I don't ask an answer for that, but I think that's something all of us should talk in a moment.
See.
A lot of things to pick up on that, but I will move to Mar first now, and then we'll come back to them in a wider conversation. I think, though, what I wanted to ask from you, Mar, is not really fully unrelated, because what we talk about, when we talk about narratives and stories, we also talk about emotions. And you have worked across Europe with many, many parties and different candidates and movements, and to see, I know that the work that you have done, you have tried to get people to understand the landscape of people and how they are motivated better than in the past. I think we are very good at politics and policies as progressives, but not always so good in emotions. We often repeat, this is something we often say, that progressive socialists, social democrats only win with hope and not with fear. But we only talk about winning with hope, and we don't often actually engage in what the hope means, or what the emotions, why the emotions are important. And we don't convey the emotions in our stories, empathy and others. So how could we be better at this, and what kind of emotions would you evoke to win the change elections that are not change elections?
So I think that truth with emotion mobilize. I think probably that's what happened in Hungary. I'm not a Hungarian, and I want to be very respectful because there's so many Hungarians in the room that could explain that. But I think that truth with emotion mobilize, emotion without truth manipulates. And I think that that's what the far right has been doing lately, basically. Searching for emotions as the shape of, as the tool for engagement. And and what we have been doing is talking about truth only. So I think that the challenge, or the, let's say the challenge or the improvement for the progressives is especially in the shaping of the truth, because as you said, we take politics so serious that we speak truth and science. And that's because we are responsible. That's why we are progressive, because, we don't want to manipulate, but we get lost in this espiral, in this kind of like a way of explaining something that we consider so important and so relevant because it can affect people's life. So, and especially in those moments where there is a lot of uncertainty and there is let's say, this crisis that we're facing. We have the war term, again, very permanent in our lives. There is a housing crisis all over the world. Everywhere you go, you hear the word housing. So there is a lot of uncertainty. And in these moments, it's very easy to call for fear and to manipulate, because people are searching for certainties. But what is more difficult is to build a positive narrative that takes into account the emotions. Of course, I don't have the solution, but I do think that narratives needs to be built with a lot of empathy. And I also think that there is a big challenge ahead of us, especially for progressive political parties, which is engaging the citizens, their voters, in the collective shape of the narrative, taking into account their emotions. And by this, I mean, parties are so used to campaign with their members. and they're so used to organize their campaign according to the capacity that they have in-house. But then when you start pushing, and I'm talking in very European terms, yeah, about doing a campaign outside of your comfortable boundaries, or with people outside of your comfortable boundaries, and taking their emotions into account, then there is a lot of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And yeah, that's my first kind of like a statement that I will go back to, but let's start taking the emotions into account through empathy, and design their narratives not only on the truth or on facts, but also on this type of emotions.
Thank you. Very interesting. I, again, immediately have a further question. I will like to say it and leave it to stew a little bit, and that is that, if truth mobilizes, and I do agree with that, then how do we define the truth? How are we the ones who define the truth? But I want to go to Luis and continue from here. If we need emotions, and as Mara was saying, that we need empathy to connect with the voters, we also need to have a lot of hard policy and good policies to make sure that we then actually have something that we would do when we get elected. You have worked on a lot of Latin American campaigns with a lot of Latin American leaders, seen a lot of successes, also some failures, and seen how stories can win. How can we communicate complex policies and complex issues in a way that are understandable and accessible for the voters?
Gracias. Hay una cuestión que para mí me parece fundamental. Yo quiero decir que además de trabajar en toda América Latina, en México, etcétera, y de norte a sur de América Latina, también he trabajado en todo el circuito francés. Yo estudié en París, en Francia, y he trabajado en Francia y también en África. Entonces, me ha resultado interesante tener una perspectiva comparativa, transcultural, y hay cosas que son absolutamente permanentes, es decir, que son generales, que son algo totalmente sólido, que es obviamente la necesidad de tener emoción en las campañas, la necesidad de simplificar el mensaje. Ahora, cuando hablamos de emoción, justamente la pregunta es la más complicada, es decir, cómo poner emoción en las propuestas, en programas y en políticas públicas. Yo creo que todo el mundo está de acuerdo en que nadie se enamora de una política pública. Entonces, hay lugares donde no llega la comunicación. Debe llegar lo que para mí es central en las campañas que hago, por lo menos, que son los contenidos estratégicos. Primero, la simplificación y la emoción son fundamentales, pero no son fundamentales para todo el mundo. Yo siempre hago como una especie de reloj estratégico que tiene que ver con el momento en que cada tipo de elector toma su decisión de voto. Entonces, al principio de las campañas, quienes toman primero su decisión, por supuesto, son quienes tienen identificación partidaria fuerte, pero también la gente y los segmentos de la sociedad, de los electores, más informados y más interesados en política. A ello no es necesario ni simplificarle ni darles emoción. Tampoco, entonces, a esa gente yo la pongo siempre en la primera fase como centro de atención y prioridad en la campaña. Después una segunda fase donde uno se centra en quienes no tienen identificación partidaria, pero sí son informados, politizados, entonces están muy atentos a qué propone cada candidato. Entonces, ahí las propuestas, los programas tienen un peso determinante. Pero las propuestas y programa son extremadamente difíciles de hacerlo llegar sin una especie de metamorfosis muy grande al último electorado, que son los árbitros de las elecciones, que son quienes deciden al final de la campaña, en lo que nosotros llamamos tercera fase, fase final de la campaña, y que son gente poco interesada en política, poco informada, donde es muy duro llegar con propuestas. Por supuesto que las propuestas de política pública tienen que simplificarse sobre la base de que la simplificación diga cosas muy simplificadas que hagan, que tengan una significación muy importante para la vida cotidiana de las personas, que sea fácil de comprender en su vida cotidiana. Ahora, eso no quiere decir que sea fácil, y más les digo, llegar al final de la campaña en un terreno programático es la mejor manera de perder elecciones, porque no hay forma, es decir, no se puede sobreestimar la comunicación a tal punto de hacer que, digamos, que un tema muy complejo pueda ser fácil de digerir para ese tipo de público. Pero quería plantear esa visión estratégica para relativizar ciertas ideas muy comunes que con emoción y con simplificación llegamos. Hay una cuestión básica, la emoción en el final es fundamental, pero tiene que estar relacionado en un terreno de personalización. Por ejemplo, en el caso del alcalde de Nueva York, ha hecho mucha simplificación de su programa, pero antes que nada tenía una inmensa seducción y había hecho una segmentación fundamental que era, hablaba en español en su lengua maternal a la gente que había sido más castigada últimamente. Perdón por la extensión.
No, don't worry. That was fascinating, and I think I very much recognize the three different groups of voters very much. Convinced. Everyone in here belongs to the bucket number one. We are all convinced. You don't need to convince us of emotions or policies or anything, and it's the second and third group who we need to talk to very much. A lot of things in these three opening comments. How do we change? How do we win narratives and change elections that we are incumbents in? How do we define the truth that mobilizes people? And how do we communicate for the last-minute voters with emotions that are backed up by the policies? I would like to ask you to comment on and raise any issues if you had on these. I have plenty of questions, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to. Mar, Aaron, Luis, take a comment. Mar starts.
Yeah, so I think that the political battle is played in the field of perception, of emotions, and subjectivity of the voters. So we're not. In the end, when we say, oh, we have a different societal model, yes, we do have different policies that, of course, they have different impact on citizens, but at the end, it's the voter that assess through their subjective perspective, through their emotions, through their perception, yeah? And I think that what the right is doing and why they are stronger than us is that they're not convincing, yeah? They just manage to reassess concepts, yeah? So it's not that they're convincing them of their societal model. I truly do not believe that people have come fascist all over. I don't think so. I have much more trust on people than this. I just think that the right has been successful in reassessing meaning and concepts to some terms, to some understanding that we thought it was never going to change. Like the concept of freedom is just crazy how they have, managed to to change the perception of freedom from in this current era, or the concept of nation, even the concept of truth is now being questioned, yeah? So I think that the concept of progress, and let me just stay a little bit here, because they have managed to own the perception, like they are the ones that are going to bring progress. And that is where I think that we progressives have been a little bit making a mistake, or like, so the right is reactionary. They love nostalgia. How many times have I heard Arun saying, nostalgia is a magic thing? And that's what they're using. They're using the nostalgia to kind of like, you know, have these people engaged. But what do we do about this? What are we asking? We're like defending, you know, that, either everything collapse and then sanity will come back, because, yeah, that's what I hear the left saying in many places. Or two, we want to go back to how things were, yeah? And we're not going to win that, yeah? Because the system didn't provide for a lot of people, so we're not going to convince people by telling them to go back to a system that was not providing for them. And also the fact of like everything needs to collapse to get sanity back. That's not where we're also going to win. So for me, I mean, and that's for me the challenge, yeah, to praise, you know, for this inevitable better future. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to see that, but I think that the left should praise for an inevitable better future where citizens feel that, you know, they can project their fears, their insecurity. It's because right now we're also a conservative ones, you know, praising for the past. So
I think I want to continue from that and ask Aaron to pick up on a couple of issues. One is the nostalgia, because I agree that I think that's a really strong motivator for the, or not motivator, but the driver for the far right and a lot of populist forces as well. And I know you talked about that a lot. But then secondly also, not just nostalgia, but who tells the best stories? Who are the best narrative holders at the moment? Because we often do tend to think that it's the far right, but where would you see the best stories are told at the moment?
I think these are, let me tackle them one at a time and remind me where I've gotten them wrong. I think actually, because of the way the tech landscape is changing, where people are doing the most organic content, you find the best organic political storytellers. So we can actually put a finger on that in Europe, I don't know about worldwide, and say France. I think the content political creators in France are ahead of everyone because they haven't been able to use political advertising. And so they've actually sort of are coming out of that funk much slower. But I want to drill down on something you said a little differently. You're saying, who are the great storytellers? Is it the right? The right aren't particularly good storytellers, but they understand the elements of the story. And the one thing we haven't talked about yet in terms of the narrative is an enemy. And we have the wrong enemy. There's a picture of Malay up, looking quite handsome, actually, wherever it is in this little center thing there, because we think that the far right are our enemy. They don't think we're their enemy. They think we're the idiots who support their enemies, right? It's a much more diminishing, demeaning thing. We have to pick an enemy. They've picked one. It's migrants. It's everything is migrants' fault. No matter what you can pin it on migrants. And what do we have? You. No. Come on, all. You know who it is. It's multinational corporations. It's big tech. The left has to regain its ability to define elite wealth as the enemy, or there will be no more victories on our side. And the ones that we have will be fleeting. Because this is what the right wing understands that we don't understand. And I think some of these elections, we're actually digging ourselves deeper in a hole, looking at you, Danish friends, wherever you are, by actually continuing the right's story. We are just enhancing their narrative and making it harder and harder for us to win elections in the future.
I think that was very powerful. Luis, I would like you to pick up on that. I know that there has been very divisive elections and political landscapes across Latin America in the last 2 decades or so. Is it difficult to define an enemy in Latin American politics, or is that something that you don't have a problem with?
Yo diría que en América Latina ahí sí es algo más específico de América Latina. Yo creo que en América Latina no necesitamos tantos enemigos o tanto a un enemigo, porque hemos convivido durante demasiado tiempo con enemigos, entonces de alguna manera ya se banalizaron demasiado los enemigos. Entonces, más bien veo que sí en América Latina y sobre todo en ese público de último tramo que es el estratégico, en mi perspectiva siempre ha funcionado mejor la idea, que también es una idea muy de progresista o muy de izquierda, que es la inclusión y que es la integración. A la mayoría de la gente esa que nosotros necesitamos de finales de campaña, generalmente no le interesa, como no le interesa la política, generalmente no le interesa lo que es inherente a la política, que es el conflicto. Entonces, cuando hay alguien que en algún sentido es la persona que puede ser muy atractiva y muy seductor o seductora, pero que no insiste en el conflicto, no insiste en tener un enemigo y no insiste en la lucha ni en la descalificación, tiene un atractivo extra para ese tipo de público. Y yo lo digo en un universo, digamos, que no es tampoco muy reducido como es toda América Latina, ¿no? Yo he trabajado bastante en México, también en el sur, y hay dentro de esa gente que es el árbitro de las elecciones una idea de que en algún sentido más bien el enemigo, o no el enemigo, sino lo que no le gusta a esa gente, es el político que solamente pelea y no hace nada concreto por el buen destino de la sociedad. Entonces yo diría que un discurso más inclusivo en el final de la campaña siempre es lo que ha funcionado mejor. En la campaña justamente de mi presidente Yamandu Orsi, había mucha gente que quería darle mucho el tema ideológico y, digamos, polarización, etcétera. Y Yamandu Orsi es una buena persona, un buen ejemplo de alguien integrador, de alguien que a priori es muy abierto a los demás. Entonces, más bien, nosotros buscábamos una idea más de integración y más bien de guardarnos los enemigos, aunque los hubiera.
I think that resonates really well, and it goes with what Aaron was saying as well about the enemies and the far right not being a good enemy or villain in our stories, because as a Finnish person, I can tell you that once the far right has been in government twice, it's a lot more difficult to tell the electorates that the sky will fall on the third try. So, you know, if they are the enemy and we live with them and we realize that, you know, that well didn't end, I think Italians could attest to this as well. I think that's a very interesting point, and begs us to discuss who the enemy are, what do we want to do. Works once, perhaps not so well after they've entered the government. Now I would like to very much have your comments and views. So if anyone has thoughts, please put your hand up. And I have John on the first row. And then, do you have a microphone? Yeah. So we have microphone because I think we need it for the translation. So if I could ask you to tell who you are, because we are here also to network and get to know as many people as possible. Tell who you are. I have your comment. I would ask you to be brief so we have as many as possible. You, and then we have
John McTernan from the UK Labour Party. I want to pick up on storytelling. Stories have great enemies. They also need great leaders, and they need huge rewards. And we've touched on housing as being an issue in all of our countries. I worry about two things. storytelling in government, when we do things we don't get it across, and failure in the core. In New Zealand Labour couldn't deliver on housing, Canadian Liberals not delivering on housing, UK Labour not delivering on housing. If you don't deliver on the hardest part of the reward, you beat an enemy, where's the reward? How do you strengthen ambition by storytelling in government, not just in campaigns?
Thank you, John. That was very interesting. Maybe I take a couple and then I let comments. So I had the next one here. Yeah, and I will have Aaron responding to that.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Mark Angel. I'm a member of the European Parliament from Luxembourg. And I often sit in the plenary and we have very short speaking time there, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And the far right, they manage in that 1 minute, they mention whatever the subject of the debate is. They mention gender ideology, migrants, the Green Deal and Brussels bureaucracy. That's their enemy. And whatever subject, they manage in a 1 minute speech to put these 4 elements in. And we don't find. And my question is, they also found a narrative. They say that socialists and the left, the only thing you care about is gender ideology, LGBTI rights, and it's not true. We are working on that, of course, but much more on social equality. But they spin that narrative to put us in this corner. And how do we get out of there? How can we get out of that corner?
Brilliant question, and I could see that there's an MEP in the house because you managed to ask your question in that 1 minute, so you that very very well. I could have a third one as well. If there is a woman in a room who wants to ask a question, I would give that to them first. I apologize for all the gentlemen, and then I will take it back to the panel and ask.
Hello, I'm Hunter Roberts from Democrats Abroad. I'm interested in the meta-narrative. So the meta-narrative is the larger context or the frame that lives beneath the narrative. So we could have a narrative about policy, we could have a narrative about migrants, but what is missing, I believe, is the meta-narrative, which is that life matters and that life is sacred. And instead, what we get all these meta-narratives, which basically, I mean, the right has lots of meta-narratives. There's technology forever, there's Andreesson's narrative, there's, I mean, there are all these, you know, anything that interferes with technology or the right of any tech oligarch to do whatever he damn well pleases is an interruption of freedom as a narrative. We need a narrative that is equally powerful, and I think it may boil down to life is sacred and we all matter.
Thank you very much. Now I will close for this because I just looked at my watch and I realized that we are quite short on time. This is such a short time we have. Could do a conversation for whoever. I will give you a chance to comment, all of you, on this, but I also would want to ask you at the same time that if you could respond to these comments that you have, but also say that what would be a one takeaway that you would want everyone in this room going forward to take with them? Aaron, you get to start.
Reflect on those questions because they're all open-ended,
Absolutely.
smart people questions and backwards. I absolutely agree with this meta-narrative thing, but I would add one more. And if the meta-narrative of Donald Trump's campaign in 2024 was no less than "you are worthy of love." This was the very simple message of the campaign. I can show you the actual content that people watched that made them feel this, and this is why it was a very positive, inclusive, and victorious campaign. So what you're saying matters, right? We can own that better than he can, right? I'll send you some links. You will flip your lid. Friend from Luxembourg, I did want to say, you know, I am guilty of being a member of the hard economic left. You know, not a popular person to be at these gatherings. That's who I am, right? But I will say something a bit squishy because I believe it, which is that intersectionality is not the cause of us losing these culture wars. It is actually the solution to us winning them. Die Linke in Germany had a beautiful billboard in Berlin. It said, "Trans people exist and billionaires shouldn't." And it was hard to find anyone who had a problem with that. It was like, okay, yeah, you got us. You know, here we are. But a little more tricky I want to talk about is housing. It represents everything that's wrong and potentially everything that's right that we can do on our side. Number one, in Europe especially, it's a 3-generation issue. Young kids can't buy a house, the parents want to get them the fuck out of their basement, and grandparents don't want them to leave the country, right? So you actually have, in a way, a perfect issue that blends in with nostalgia. We used to build house. Why can't we build a council house anymore? Why can't we build? Everyone knows this, and yet we can't have it. Let's ask that question. Why? Name names. This shitty company, this construction company, they are crooks. Like, that should be in the social media thing. It should be letting people know, like, how that works. And in Netherlands, actually, there was a great jujitsu flipping the narrative ad that started out with Wilders saying, you know, no one recognizes their own country anymore. We feel like we don't know it. And then cutting to old Dutch people saying, yeah. And it's because we used to have social housing, and we used to actually be poorer, but we took care of people better. What the hell happened? Progressive nostalgia. Sorry, I think I overstepped. But that would be my takeaway also, progressive nostalgia.
I would love us to use progressive nostalgia. Mar, you want to take up on the questions?
I just want to, like, commenting on one John, I think, said, is like, I think that when progressives deliver, we're just unbeatable, yeah? But we need to deliver. So we've also come across to, to getting politicians that are delivering more or less, or at least they're pretending to deliver. Like, Donald Trump is doing crazy things, and people believe that somehow he was delivering on what he promised. Pedro Sánchez is doing crazy things. Yes, what Pedro Sánchez is doing is just so crazy that, like, he's delivering in so many aspects, and that's like, that's his wonder, yeah? So, like, I think that when progressives deliver, they're unbeatable, because we based our policies on truth, and there, you know, there is real care about it. So I think that that is where we should also focus our narrative, in delivering, and we have not delivered for a while, and we also need to remind constantly on what we have delivered. My mom came here and she was working 14 hours a day. 14 hours a day she was working in a factory. Obviously, the system has delivered for me, because I do work 14 hours, but like in a very different conditions that my mom did. So I think that we also, and that's my last comment, let's remind people of what we have done to deliver, because the system is very complex, yeah? So, like, there is this kind of like message discipline thing that nobody takes into consideration, because candidates get bored of listening to themselves. I've said this so many times. I don't care. This is your triangle. Just, you know, stick to your message discipline, because, you know, that's... So I would also like to remind here of those campaigners that, like, there is this reminding of the things that we've done. We don't need to be the, as you said, oh, they also come with the 3 messages of gender, migration. Yeah, well, they're very disciplined, and we aren't. We need to have an opinion on this and that and this and the other thing. No, sorry, just also stick to your message discipline, and especially on explaining what you have delivered on.
Thank you, Mar. And then Luis, you want to pick up on the questions, one or all of them?
Yo solo quería hacer una pequeña puntualización, que es que sin duda estructuralmente la derecha tiene una ventaja muy grande, que son estructuralmente, van a la simplificación. Justamente es lo que define la derecha, es decir, el discurso de odio siempre es muy simple y se hace, ya un minuto sobra para decir ese discurso de odio o discurso que, bueno, es muy simple. Ahora, el universo progresista, en lo que no puede, digamos, imitarlo, es en eso. Obviamente, siempre hay un principio, ¿no? que la derecha simplifica y la izquierda explica. Entonces hay una cuestión mucho más complicada, un trayecto mucho más complicado, pero yo creo que hay que buscar, sí, la simplificación, pero sobre todo en los valores básicos, esenciales, que son de la izquierda. Es decir, si uno ve un poco el discurso de la derecha, hay cosas, por ejemplo, bueno, Trump y Milley también, que es, digamos, ellos utilizan la locura como una estrategia, utilizan el insulto como una estrategia y utilizan la negación y la indefinición entre verdad y mentira como un objetivo estratégico que lleve a que la gente sea absolutamente indiferente y que no diferencie la verdad de la mentira. Entonces, yo creo que hay una cuestión básica que es aprender, si nosotros tenemos que simplificar algo, es cómo simplificar la esperanza y cómo simplificar los valores esenciales que tienen que ver con el universo progresista y los valores, y no copiar nada, digamos, de la derecha, salvo, digamos, esa economía de medios.
Thank you very, very much for all three of you. If I needed to summarize this conversation in 3 points, I will absolutely kill your arguments right now, but every election will be a change election from now on, and we should behave like that. In the elections, we need to win the emotional battle at the last minute to convince the third group of voters. And when we win, we need to deliver, otherwise we will not win again. And I think that's what I would take out of this. We don't have enough time to continue. I would love to have another 2 hours of this. So I just say a massive, huge thank you for Arun, Mar, and Luis. This has been very interesting and inspiring. And I do welcome all of you to pull from your shoulders and talk to you later after this, because I think these people have such an expertise that we should all learn a lot more from them. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the days.